Welcome to Timeless Tales Reimagined, a place where the stories of old come alive once more. Here we journey through the timeless classics, retelling them in a way that feels cozy, captivating, and easy to understand. Today, we delve into one of the greatest literary masterpieces of the Middle Ages, the Canterbury Tales. Written by Geoffrey Chaucer in the late 14th century, this collection of stories has stood the test of time for its vivid characters, rich storytelling, and universal themes. Chaucer, often called the father of English literature, created the Canterbury Tales as a series of tales told by a group of pilgrims travelling together to the shrine of St. Thomas Becket in Canterbury. Each pilgrim tells their own story, offering a snapshot of medieval life. What makes this work truly remarkable is how it captures the diversity of people, from noble knights to bawdy millers, from devout clerics to worldly merchants, all with humour, wisdom and humanity. Even today, the tales resonate with us because they explore themes that are still relevant: love, greed, morality, and the complexities of human nature. Chaucer's work reminds us that the stories of the past are not so different from our own. Let's embark on this journey together, beginning with an introduction to the world of the Canterbury Tales. Sit back, relax, and let me take you on a pilgrimage through time. Introduction to the Canterbury Tales. When April's gentle rains have pierced the drought of March to its roots, and the warm breath of Zephyrus awakens life in every budding tree and flower, people feel a stirring in their hearts. This is the time when travellers set out on pilgrimages, seeking distant shrines and sacred places. And so begins the journey to Canterbury, to the shrine of St. Thomas Becket, the holy martyr who is believed to bring healing to the sick. Our story begins at the Tabard Inn in Southwark, just outside London. Here, a diverse group of 29 pilgrims has gathered, each with their own unique story and purpose for the journey. They come from all walks of life: nobles and peasants, clergy and merchants, men and women. Among them are a knight, a prioress, a miller, a cook, and even a pardoner who sells indulgences. Together, they form a lively and colourful company, each reflecting a different facet of medieval society. As the evening unfolds, the innkeeper, a cheerful and shrewd man named Harry Bailey, proposes a game to pass the time during their journey. Each pilgrim will tell 2 tales on the way to Canterbury and 2 on the return. The one who tells the best tale, as judged by the group, will win a grand supper at the Tabard Inn, paid for by the rest of the company. And with this, the stage is set for a journey filled with stories of love and betrayal, of humour and sorrow, of virtue and vice. Before we dive into these tales, let's take a moment to meet some of the pilgrims. First, there's the knight, a man of honour and chivalry who has fought valiantly in many battles. Despite his high status, he is humble and courteous, a true model of knighthood. Travelling with him is his son, the squire, a young and spirited man, full of energy and charm. He is learning the ways of knighthood while also enjoying the pleasures of youth. His songs, poems, and vibrant personality make him a delight to watch. Next, there's the prioress, a nun with impeccable manners and a kind heart. She speaks French, keeps small dogs, and carries a rosary engraved with the phrase, "Love conquers all." While devout, she also has a touch of vanity, showing Chaucer's gentle humour in her portrayal. Then we have the miller, a bawdy and boisterous man with a knack for crude jokes. His tales will contrast sharply with those of the more noble pilgrims, but that's the charm of this journey. Every voice has its place. Finally, among the most intriguing is the wife of Bath, a bold and confident woman with sharp wit and a wealth of experience, having been married 5 times. Her perspective on love, power and relationships will be unlike anything you've heard before. And so, with a cheerful spirit and a bit of friendly competition, the pilgrims set off, their stories ready to unfold. Each tale will give us a glimpse into their hearts and minds, while also painting a vivid picture of the world they live in. Join me as we begin this journey, exploring the first tale, the story told by the knight. The Knight's Tale. Our journey begins with the knight, the first to share his story. True to his noble character, he tells a tale of chivalry, honour and love, a story set in ancient Greece in the city of Thebes. 2 knights, Arcite and Palamon, are captured during a war and imprisoned in a tower by Duke Theseus of Athens. Though they are bound by chains, their spirits are not, and both men gaze upon the same vision, Emily, a woman of extraordinary beauty, walking in the garden below their prison. In an instant, both knights fall deeply in love with her, their friendship turning into a rivalry. As fate would have it, Arcite is eventually released from prison, but banished from Athens. Though free, he suffers deeply, longing to see Emily again. Palamon, still locked away, endures the torment of watching his rival escape while he remains a captive. Both knights are prisoners of their love, bound as much by their hearts as by chains and exile. Years pass, and through a twist of fate, Arcite disguises himself and returns to Athens. Palamon, meanwhile, escapes from prison. The two knights meet by chance in a forest, and their love for Emily drives them to a bitter fight. The commotion draws the attention of Duke Theseus, who intervenes. Instead of punishing them, he decides to settle the matter in a noble way. The two knights will face each other in a grand tournament, the victor winning Emily's hand in marriage. Theseus declares that each knight will have a year to gather their forces and prepare for battle. The day of the tournament arrives, and the city is alive with excitement. Arcite and Palamon fight fiercely, both driven by their love for Emily. Arcite emerges victorious, but fate has other plans. As he celebrates his win, a sudden accident befalls him. Mortally wounded, he calls for Palamon and Emily, and with his dying breath, he blesses their union. Palamon and Emily marry, and while their happiness is bittersweet, the story leaves us with a powerful reminder of the unpredictable nature of fate and the enduring strength of true love. This tale, rich with noble ideals and profound emotions, reflects the knight's own values and sets a tone of dignity for the stories to come. But as we move forward, the tales take on wildly different tones, beginning with the next pilgrim, the boisterous miller. Stay tuned for a bawdy tale that is sure to bring laughter and mischief to our journey. The Miller's Tale. As the knight finishes his noble story, the pilgrims applaud, but soon the lively and boisterous miller insists on taking his turn. With a mischievous grin and a hint of ale on his breath, he warns the company that his tale will be bawdy and not for the faint of heart. And so begins a riotous story of love, trickery, and sheer absurdity. In a small village, there lives a carpenter named John, who is much older than his beautiful young wife, Alison. John is deeply protective of Alison, guarding her jealously from the eyes of others. However, despite his efforts, Alison attracts the attention of two admirers: Nicholas, a clever and cheeky student boarding with the carpenter, and Absalom, a foppish and overly romantic parish clerk. Nicholas devises a cunning plan to seduce Alison. Using his wit, he convinces John that a great flood, much like Noah's, is about to engulf the world. To survive, they must prepare by building 3 tubs, tying them to the roof and waiting inside them for the waters to rise. John, trusting Nicholas, follows the plan, leaving Alison and Nicholas alone in the house. As the carpenter sleeps in his suspended tub, dreaming of impending doom, Alison and Nicholas revel in their stolen time together. Meanwhile, Absalom, determined to win Alison's love, approaches her window in the dead of night, serenading her with songs and professing his undying devotion. But Alison, ever playful, decides to teach Absalom a lesson. She offers him a kiss, but instead presents him with something far less romantic. Humiliated and furious, Absalom vows revenge. He returns with a red-hot poker, ready to repay the trick. When Absalom comes back to the window, Nicholas, unaware of the earlier events, decides to play his own prank. He leans out, only to be met with the scorching brand of Absalom's poker. In pain and panic, Nicholas cries out for water, awakening the carpenter, who believes the flood has begun. In a rush, John cuts the rope holding his tub, crashing to the ground in a heap of confusion. The tale ends in chaos, with the carpenter ridiculed by the townsfolk, Absalom nursing his wounded pride, and Alison and Nicholas escaping their antics largely unscathed. The miller laughs uproariously as he finishes his tale, unapologetic for its crude humour and delighted by the uproar it causes among the pilgrims. While vastly different from the knight's tale, the miller's story brings levity and irreverence to the journey, showcasing the humour and wit of everyday folk. Next, we'll hear from the wife of Bath, a woman with a bold spirit and an unforgettable perspective on love and power. Stay tuned. The Wife of Bath's Tale. The wife of Bath, a woman of experience and bold opinions, steps forward with confidence to share her tale. Before she begins, she offers a spirited prologue, defending her life choices and challenging societal norms. Having been married 5 times, she claims her knowledge of love is unparalleled and sets out to prove it with a story that is as thought-provoking as it is enchanting. Her tale begins in the time of King Arthur, in a land where magic and mystery abound. A young knight, headstrong and reckless, commits a grave crime against a maiden. For his offence, he is condemned to death, but Queen Guinevere intervenes, offering him a chance at redemption. She gives him a year and a day to answer a single question. What is it that women most desire? The knight sets out on a journey, asking everyone he meets, but the answers are as varied as the people. Some say women desire wealth, others beauty, and still others power or flattery. As the year draws to a close, the knight despairs, believing he will never find the answer. One day, as he rides through a forest, he encounters an old, haggard woman. She offers him the answer he seeks, but under one condition. He must promise to grant her whatever she desires in return. Desperate, the knight agrees. When the knight presents the old woman's answer to the queen, it is met with approval. He declares that what women most desire is sovereignty, the power to have control over their own lives and decisions. The queen and her court are satisfied, and the knight's life is spared. But the old woman now makes her demand. She wishes to marry the knight. Horrified but bound by his promise, the knight reluctantly agrees, and their wedding is a solemn and joyless affair. That night, in their chamber, the old woman confronts the knight. She offers him a choice. She can remain old and faithful, or become young and beautiful but possibly unfaithful. The knight, humbled by his ordeal, responds wisely. He tells her to choose whatever she believes will make them both happiest, granting her the very sovereignty she spoke of. Pleased by his answer, the old woman transforms into a young and beautiful maiden, loyal and loving to him. The tale ends with the couple living happily ever after, and the wife of Bath adds her own cheeky commentary, wishing for all women to have obedient husbands who understand the wisdom of her story. Her tale is met with laughter and applause, its blend of wisdom, humour and romance captivating the pilgrims. The wife of Bath's voice echoes long after her story ends, reminding us of the enduring power of self-determination and respect. Next, we turn to the Pardoner, whose tale offers a darker perspective, exploring themes of greed, corruption, and the consequences of human folly. Stay tuned, The Pardoner's Tale. The Pardoner, a man known for selling indulgences and relics of questionable authenticity, takes his turn to speak. He begins with a candid confession, admitting his hypocrisy. He preaches against greed, yet he himself is deeply greedy. Despite this, he boasts of his ability to move others to repentance with his stories, and now he offers a tale that carries a grim moral lesson. In a small village, 3 young men, revellers given to drinking and debauchery, hear of a friend who has died suddenly. Angered and emboldened by their drunkenness, they swear to seek out death himself and destroy him. Their quest begins with bravado, but quickly takes a sinister turn. As they journey, the 3 encounter an old man, frail and weary, who longs for death to take him, but cannot find release. The young men mock him, but he directs them to a tree in a nearby grove, claiming they will find death waiting there. When they arrive, they do not find death, but instead discover a pile of gold coins beneath the tree. Their quest forgotten, greed takes hold of them, and they plot to keep the treasure for themselves. Fearing they will be caught if they transport the gold during the day, they decide to wait until nightfall. Hunger soon strikes, and they send the youngest of the 3 to fetch food and drink. While he is away, the 2 remaining conspirators plot to kill him upon his return so they can split the gold between themselves. Meanwhile, the youngest reveller, overcome by greed, poisons the wine he brings back, intending to kill the other 2 and claim the treasure for himself. When the youngest returns, the 2 others stab him to death. In their triumph, they drink the poisoned wine and die as well. In the end, all 3 find death, not as a foe to be defeated, but as the inevitable consequence of their own avarice. The Pardoner concludes his tale with a chilling moral. Greed is the root of all evil. But his sermon takes a self-serving turn, as he urges the pilgrims to buy his relics and pardons, claiming they will cleanse their sins. This tale leaves the pilgrims uneasy. Its dark humour and stark warning about greed and betrayal contrast sharply with the lively spirit of the journey, but it also reveals the pardoner's own nature, a blend of cunning, manipulation, and self-awareness. The group presses onward, and next, the nun's priest will bring a tale of laughter and wisdom, one that lightens the mood with a delightful fable of pride and cleverness. Stay tuned, the nun's priest tale. The mood among the pilgrims lightens as the nun's priest, a man of wit and wisdom, begins his tale. His story is a fable, a humorous yet insightful account of pride, cunning, and the consequences of falling prey to flattery. On a quiet farm, there lives a rooster named Chanticleer, renowned for his magnificent crowing and splendid plumage. His crow is so precise that it rivals the accuracy of any clock. Chanticleer is proud of his talent and appearance, and he enjoys the admiration of his many hens, especially his favourite, the lovely and wise Pertolote. One night, Chanticleer has a terrible dream. He sees a fearsome creature, a fox, lurking in the shadows, waiting to pounce on him. Alarmed, he shares his dream with Pertolote. She dismisses his fears, attributing the nightmare to indigestion, and advises him to take better care of his diet. Emboldened by her dismissive words, Chanticleer brushes aside his concerns, though a part of him remains uneasy. As the days pass, Chanticleer struts about the farmyard, basking in the sunlight and his own self-importance. Unbeknownst to him, a sly fox named Reynard has been watching from the bushes, plotting to capture the proud rooster. One fateful day, Reynard approaches Chanticleer with smooth and flattering tongue. He praises the rooster's melodious crow, claiming it surpasses all other sounds in the world. Flattered and eager to demonstrate his skill, Chanticleer closes his eyes, stretches his neck, and lets out a powerful crow. At that moment, Reynard pounces, clamping his jaws around Chanticleer and running off into the forest. The farmyard erupts into chaos as the hens and other animals cry out in alarm. Reynard, however, is too swift, and it seems Chanticleer's fate is sealed. But Chanticleer, clever and resourceful, devises a plan. As the fox runs, he begins to speak, playing on Reynard's own pride. He suggests that the fox stop and taunt his pursuers, boasting of his cleverness in capturing such a magnificent prize. Reynard, eager to gloat, opens his mouth to speak, and Chanticleer seizes the opportunity to escape, flying up into a tree. Safe from the fox's reach, Chanticleer rebukes him, declaring that he has learned the dangers of pride and flattery. Reynard, realizing he has been outwitted, slinks away in defeat. The tale ends with a lesson. Beware of those who seek to manipulate through flattery, and never let pride cloud your judgment. The pilgrims laugh and cheer, delighted by the humour and wisdom of the nun's priest story. As the journey continues, the next tale offers a more tender exploration of love, honour and sacrifice. Stay tuned for the Franklin's Tale, a story of grace and compromise. The Franklin's Tale. The Franklin, a man of generosity and good cheer, takes his turn to share a tale. His story is one of love, honour, and the delicate balance of promises, weaving a narrative that is both heartwarming and thought-provoking. In Brittany, a noble knight named Arviragus marries a beautiful and virtuous woman named Dorigen. Their love is built on mutual respect and equality, a rarity in their time. Before long, however, Arviragus must leave for England to pursue his knightly duties, leaving Dorigen behind. Heartbroken and lonely, Dorigen spends her days by the sea, gazing at the waves and longing for her husband's return. Her sadness deepens as she notices the jagged rocks along the coast, which have claimed many lives. She fears for Arviragus's safety when he returns by ship. One day, during a festive gathering, a young and handsome squire named Aurelius confesses his love for Dorigen. He has admired her from afar for years, and in a moment of desperation he declares his feelings. Dorigen, shocked and faithful to her husband, dismisses him but offers a jesting response. She will love him only if he can remove all the dangerous rocks from the coast. Aurelius takes her words to heart. Consumed by his love and despair, he seeks the help of a magician who promises to create an illusion that will make the rocks disappear. The magician's spell is successful, and the coastline appears smooth and safe. Aurelius, emboldened, approaches Dorigen, reminding her of her miss. Dorigen is devastated to her husband. She feels trapped. She confesses reproach. Instead, her to honour her promise to Aurelius. He values her integrity above all else and believes that their love can withstand this trial. When Dorigen reluctantly goes to Aurelius, the young squire is struck by her sorrow and the nobility of her husband's actions. Moved by their virtue, Aurelius releases Dorigen from her promise, choosing to act with honour rather than selfishness. In a final act of generosity, the magician, impressed by Aurelius's integrity, forgives the debt owed for the spell, completing the tale with a reminder of the power of compassion and grace. The Franklin's Tale is a story of compromise, selflessness, and the true nature of love. It leaves the pilgrims reflecting on the importance of kindness and the value of keeping one's word. As the sun begins to set on the pilgrim's journey, the next tale promises a darker, moralistic story, The Physician's Tale, a tragic tale of virtue and sacrifice. The Physician's Tale. The physician, a learned and sombre man, steps forward to tell his tale. His story is one of virtue, corruption, and the tragic cost of maintaining honour in a world filled with injustice. The tale centres on a virtuous and beautiful young maiden named Virginia, the daughter of a noble knight, Virginius. Virginia is not only lovely, but also pure of heart, embodying the ideals of virtue and modesty. Her father cherishes her and vows to protect her at all costs. In the same town lives a corrupt and lecherous judge named Appius, who is consumed with lust upon seeing Virginia. He devises a sinister plan to claim her for himself. Appius conspires with a deceitful man named Claudius, instructing him to falsely accuse Virginius of having unlawfully taken Virginia as his own child. Claudius claims that Virginia is actually a servant girl stolen from his household. Appius, abusing his power as judge, rules in favour of Claudius, declaring that Virginia must be handed over to him. Virginius, realising the evil intent behind the ruling, is faced with an unbearable choice: surrender his daughter to a life of shame and dishonour, or take drastic measures to preserve her virtue. With a heavy heart, Virginius explains the situation to Virginia. The young girl, understanding the gravity of the situation and determined to protect her honour, agrees to her father's difficult decision. In an act of immense sorrow, Virginius takes Virginia's life to save her from the clutches of Appius. Virginius brings her lifeless body to the court, confronting Appius with the consequences of his treachery. The townspeople, outraged by the judge's corruption and cruelty, rise up against him. Appius is imprisoned and eventually takes his own life, while Claudius is exiled. The tale ends on a sombre note, with the physician urging the pilgrims to remember the importance of virtue and the dangers of unchecked power. He concludes with a moral: to guard one's integrity, even in the face of great adversity, is the highest form of honour. The Physician's Tale leaves the group in a reflective mood, its tragic message contrasting sharply with the lively and light-hearted stories told earlier. To lift their spirits, the next pilgrim, the pardoner, offers a moral tale, though one laced with his own signature style of dark humour and biting commentary. The Merchant's Tale. Next, the merchant takes his turn, offering a tale that explores themes of marriage, loyalty, and deception, all wrapped in a story that is both humorous and cautionary. The story is set in Lombardy, where an elderly knight named January, after many years of bachelorhood, decides to marry. He believes that taking a young wife will bring him happiness and ensure his care in old age. After much deliberation, he chooses a beautiful and youthful woman named May, who agrees to marry him despite the vast difference in their ages. At first, January is overjoyed with his new bride, doting on her and believing their union to be perfect. However, May finds herself repelled by her husband's age and possessiveness. Secretly, she begins to develop feelings for a young and handsome squire named Damien, who serves in their household. Damien, equally smitten, writes love letters to May, which she secretly accepts. Their mutual affection quickly grows into a clandestine affair. Meanwhile, January remains oblivious, convinced of his wife's fidelity and the happiness of their marriage. One day, January decides to build a walled garden, a private paradise where he can spend time alone with May. Little does he know, this secluded garden will become the setting for her betrayal. Shortly after the garden is completed, January is struck blind, which only deepens his reliance on May. She continues her secret affair with Damien, emboldened by her husband's inability to see. One day, in the very garden January had created, Damien climbs a tree to wait for May. She uses the excuse of wanting some fruit to join him, and the two lovers meet in the branches. At that very moment, the gods Pluto and Proserpina, who have been observing the situation, intervene. Pluto, angered by May's deceit, restores January's sight so he can witness her betrayal. But Proserpina, sympathetic to May's plight, grants her the wit to explain herself. As January's vision is restored, he sees May and Damien together in the tree. Furious and heartbroken, he demands an explanation. May, quick thinking and cunning, claims that his sudden ability to see has confused him and that her actions were merely a test of his vision. She convinces him that what he witnessed was an illusion, and astonishingly, January believes her. The tale ends with January blissfully unaware of the truth, May satisfied in her cleverness, and Damien left to continue his secret role. The merchant closes his tale with a wry commentary on the complexities of marriage, leaving the pilgrims chuckling and shaking their heads at the absurdity of it all. The merchant's tale, with its mix of humour and sharp social critique, lightens the mood of the journey. But the tales ahead promise new twists and turns as the pilgrims draw closer to Canterbury. The Clerk's tale. The Clerk, a quiet and scholarly man, begins his tale with a humble demeanour. His story is one of patience, loyalty, and the trials of love, centred on a noble yet deeply flawed lord and his steadfast wife. The tale is set in the Italian town of Saluzzo, where a young and virtuous marquis named Walter rules. Though admired by his subjects, Walter refuses to marry, enjoying his carefree life. His people, however, worry about the future of their land and plead with him to take a wife and secure an heir. Reluctantly, Walter agrees, but insists on choosing his bride himself. Walter selects Griselda, a poor but beautiful and virtuous maiden, whose kind heart and gentle spirit win his admiration. Despite her humble origins, he marries her in a grand ceremony, and Griselda adapts to her new role with grace and devotion. But Walter, driven by a desire to test her loyalty, devises a series of cruel trials to determine the strength of her love and obedience. First, after the birth of their daughter, he falsely claims that his people are unhappy with the child's lowly lineage. He tells Griselda that the baby must be taken away and secretly sends the child to be raised elsewhere. Though heartbroken, Griselda accepts his decision without complaint. Years later, Griselda gives birth to a son, and Walter repeats the cruel deception, claiming the boy must also be sent away. Once again, Griselda submits to his will, hiding her anguish. Walter's tests grow even harsher. He pretends to annul their marriage, declaring that he must marry a noblewoman to satisfy his people. He orders Griselda to leave the palace and return to her father's home, stripped of her status. Griselda, though devastated, complies, showing no resentment toward Walter. In a final act of cruelty, Walter summons Griselda back to prepare for his new bride's arrival. He reveals a young girl who is actually their long-lost daughter as his new fiancée. Griselda, unaware of the truth, praises the girl's beauty and wishes Walter and his bride happiness. At last, Walter reveals his ruse, admitting that the girl is their daughter and that his tests were meant to prove Griselda's loyalty and virtue. Overcome with emotion, he begs for her forgiveness. Griselda, ever patient and loving, forgives him, and the family is joyfully reunited. The Clerk ends his tale with a moral. Griselda's patience and humility are virtues to be admired, though he acknowledges that such extremes are not to be expected of everyone. He advises women to balance patience with self-respect, and he gently critiques Walter's actions as being excessive and unjust. The pilgrims, moved by the tale, discuss its themes of love, loyalty, and the limits of human endurance. The journey continues, and next the squire steps forward with a tale of chivalry, magic, and adventure. The Reeve's Tale. After the bawdy antics of the miller's tale, the Reeve, a carpenter by trade, steps forward to share his story. Bitter about the miller's portrayal of a foolish carpenter, the Reeve crafts a tale of his own, a humorous yet vengeful tale about a cunning miller outwitted by two clever students. The story begins in a small village where a miller named Simkin runs a prosperous mill. Simkin is known for his dishonesty, stealing grain and flour from his customers. Despite his wealth, he is coarse and arrogant, taking pride in his ability to outsmart others. He lives with his domineering wife and their 2 children, a fiery young woman and a baby boy. One day, 2 students from a nearby college, John and Alan, come to the mill to grind their corn. Aware of Simkin's reputation, they decide to watch him closely to ensure he doesn't cheat them. Simkin, noticing their vigilance, devises a plan. While the students are distracted, he untethers their horse, causing it to wander off. While they search for the horse, Simkin steals half their grain and replaces it with bran. When the students return and discover the theft, they are furious but decide to stay the night at the miller's house, hoping to recover their grain. As the household settles in for the night, the students plot their revenge. John sneaks into the miller's bed and seduces his daughter, while Alan slips into the bed of the miller's wife. Unaware of the mix-up, the wife mistakes Alan for her husband. As dawn breaks, Alan accidentally climbs into the wrong bed and wakes Simkin. Chaos erupts as the miller realizes what has happened. A fight ensues, with punches and curses flying in every direction. In the scuffle, John and Alan manage to escape with their grain, leaving Simkin humiliated and his household in disarray. The students return to their college, laughing at how they turned the tables on the dishonest miller. The Reeve's tale ends with a pointed reminder of the miller's own flaws, leaving the pilgrims laughing and perhaps reflecting on the humorous justice of it all. The Prioress's tale, the Prioress, a gentle and devout woman, begins her tale with a prayer to the Virgin Mary, invoking her guidance for the story she is about to tell. Her tale is one of piety, innocence, and tragic martyrdom, steeped in medieval religious devotion. In a Christian town within a larger non-Christian community, there lives a devout widow and her young son. The boy, a cheerful and innocent child of 7, attends a Christian school where he learns songs in praise of the Virgin Mary. One particular hymn, O Alma Redemptoris Mater, captivates his heart. Though he does not fully understand its meaning, he sings it daily as he walks through the streets. The town's Jewish community, depicted in the tale according to the prejudices of the time, becomes enraged by the boy's singing, viewing it as a provocation. They conspire to silence him, hiring a murderer who slays the boy and casts his body into a cesspit. When the widow notices her son's absence, she searches frantically and eventually discovers his body. To her astonishment, the boy continues to sing the hymn, even in death. The miracle draws a crowd, and the Christian townsfolk, filled with awe and sorrow, carry the boy's body in a solemn procession to the church. At the church, the local abbot questions the boy, and he explains that the Virgin Mary placed a pearl on his tongue, allowing him to sing until a proper burial could be arranged. Once the abbot removes the pearl, the boy's song ceases, and he is laid to rest. The tale concludes with the prioress offering praise to the Virgin Mary, and urging the pilgrims to reflect on the power of faith and the innocence of children. Though deeply moving for its depiction of faith, the tale also reflects the prejudices of its time, which modern audiences may find troubling. The pilgrims, however, respond with reverence, appreciating the prioress's heartfelt storytelling. The Tale of Sir Thopas Chaucer, the narrator himself, takes his turn to tell a tale. With a mischievous twinkle in his eye, he begins a parody of chivalric romance, a whimsical and deliberately absurd story of a knight whose adventures seem more like comic misadventures. Sir Thopas is a knight of great renown, admired for his handsome appearance and skill in battle. He lives in a dreamy world of fantasies and quests, but his primary desire is to find a maiden so beautiful and virtuous that she will be worthy of his love. He sets off on his noble steed in search of this ideal woman. As Sir Thopas rides through a magical forest, he encounters a fearsome giant named Sir Oliphant, who challenges him to a duel. Sir Thopas, though brave, realizes he is unprepared for such a fight. He gallops away, vowing to return once he has better armor and weapons. The story then takes a whimsical turn, filled with rhyming couplets, playful repetitions, and a rambling narrative that delights in its own silliness. Chaucer's exaggerated descriptions of Sir Thopas's prowess, his noble steed, and his endless quest for love poke fun at the clichés of romantic tales. However, before the tale can progress any further, the host interrupts Chaucer. Frustrated by the nonsensical nature of the story, the host demands that he stop. He chastises Chaucer for wasting the group's time with such frivolity and urges him to tell a proper story. Chaucer, embarrassed but compliant, agrees to tell a more serious tale. And so, the Tale of Sir Thopas comes to an abrupt and humorous end, leaving the pilgrims chuckling at its absurdity. The group then turns to Chaucer's second tale, the Tale of Melibee, a moral and reflective prose story, which contrasts sharply with the light-hearted parody of Sir Thopas. The Tale of Melibee. After the host's interruption of the comedic tale of Sir Thopas, Chaucer begins a more serious and reflective tale. Unlike his previous attempt, the Tale of Melibee is a moral allegory presented in prose, filled with lessons on wisdom, patience, and forgiveness. The story centres on a wealthy and powerful man named Melibee. He lives a prosperous life with his wife, Prudence, and their beloved daughter, Sophie. However, tragedy strikes when three enemies break into their home while Melibee is away, attacking Sophie and leaving her grievously wounded. Enraged and heartbroken, Melibee vows revenge against the perpetrators. His advisors, a group of friends and noblemen, encourage him to respond with swift and decisive violence. They argue that retaliation is the only way to preserve his honour and authority. However, Prudence, a woman of great wisdom, counsels patience and deliberation. Prudence advises Melibee to consider the consequences of rash actions. She reminds him of the value of forgiveness and the long-term benefits of seeking peace over vengeance. Using a series of proverbs, biblical references, and philosophical arguments, she persuades him to think carefully about his choices. Melibee, though initially resistant, begins to heed his wife's advice. With her guidance, he seeks reconciliation rather than revenge. He meets with his enemies, listens to their grievances, and negotiates a peaceful resolution. In the end, he forgives them, demonstrating magnanimity and earning their respect. The tale concludes with a moral. Wisdom and patience are greater virtues than anger and violence. Prudence's influence highlights the importance of listening to reason, valuing peace, and seeking justice in a way that promotes harmony. Though heavy in its moral tone, the tale leaves the pilgrims reflecting on the nature of wisdom and the complexities of human conflict. As the journey progresses, the next pilgrim, the Manciple, will share a tale with a lighter tone, a fable about discretion and the dangers of loose speech. The Manciple's tale. As the journey nears its end, the Manciple, a shrewd and practical man, steps forward to tell his story as a fable, a cautionary tale about discretion, loyalty, and the perils of a loose tongue. The story centres on the god Phoebus, who in this version of the tale is portrayed as a mortal man. Phoebus is a perfect Renaissance figure, a skilled archer, a master musician, and a man of great beauty. He lives with his wife, whom he loves dearly and guards with great jealousy. In his home, Phoebus keeps a pet crow, a bird of pure white feathers, who has been taught to speak. Though Phoebus adores his wife, she is unfaithful to him. While Phoebus is away, she takes a lover, betraying the trust of her husband. The white crow, ever observant, witnesses the affair and later reveals the truth to Phoebus in perfect human speech. Enraged by the crow's revelation, Phoebus falls into a fit of uncontrollable jealousy. In his fury, he kills his wife. But as the rage subsides, Phoebus is overcome with grief and regret. Realizing the irreversible consequences of his actions, he turns his anger toward the crow, blaming the bird for bringing the painful truth to light. In his sorrow and rage, Phoebus curses the crow, stripping it of its beautiful white feathers and replacing them with black ones. He also robs the bird of its ability to speak, condemning it to caw for all eternity. From that day forward, all crows are black and voiceless, serving as a reminder of the dangers of speaking too freely. The Manciple concludes his tale with a moral. Discretion is a virtue, and it is often better to keep silent than to reveal truths that may cause harm. He urges the pilgrims to consider the consequences of their words, reminding them that even the truth can be destructive if spoken carelessly. The tale's witty and reflective tone leaves the pilgrims in thoughtful conversation. As the journey approaches its final stage, the parson steps forward to deliver the last tale, a lengthy sermon that brings the storytelling to a solemn and contemplative close. The Parson's Tale. As the pilgrimage nears its conclusion, the parson, a devout and virtuous man, takes his turn. Unlike the other pilgrims, he does not tell a story in the traditional sense. Instead, he delivers a sermon, a deeply reflective and moral discourse on the nature of sin, repentance, and salvation. The parson begins by stating his purpose: to guide the pilgrims, and by extension the audience, toward a virtuous and holy life. Drawing on theological teachings, he divides his sermon into 3 parts: the identification of sin, the process of confession, and the path to penance. 1. The 7 deadly sins. The parson explores each of the 7 deadly sins: pride, envy, wrath, sloth, greed, gluttony, and lust, describing their effects on the soul and how they manifest in daily life. He uses vivid examples and moral lessons to emphasize the importance of recognizing and overcoming these faults. 2. The importance of confession. He stresses the need for honest and heartfelt confession, urging listeners to confront their sins openly and seek forgiveness. The parson emphasizes that true confession is not merely an outward act, but an inward transformation of the heart. 3. The path to penance. Finally, he speaks of penance as the path to reconciliation with God. Acts of charity, prayer, and self-discipline are highlighted as ways to cleanse the soul and live a righteous life. The parson encourages humility and dedication, reminding the pilgrims that salvation is a journey requiring effort and faith. The parson's tale ends with a call to action, urging the pilgrims to reflect on their own lives and make amends for their shortcomings. His words are solemn and sincere, providing a spiritual conclusion to the storytelling. As the pilgrims approach Canterbury, they are left in thoughtful silence, pondering the lessons of the journey. Chaucer, as narrator, reflects on the diverse stories and personalities encountered along the way, acknowledging the complexity of human nature. And so, our journey through the Canterbury Tales comes to an end. From the noble chivalry of the knight's tale to the sombre reflections of the parson's tale, we've experienced a rich tapestry of stories that capture the humour, wisdom, and complexities of human nature. These timeless tales remind us that while centuries may pass, the themes of love, morality, and the human spirit remain ever relevant. Thank you for joining me on this adventure. I hope you've enjoyed the stories as much as I've enjoyed sharing them with you. Your thoughts and feedback mean the world to me, so please let me know what you think in the comments below. Which tale resonated with you the most? What themes stood out to you? I'd love to hear your perspective. If you'd like to continue exploring more timeless tales, stay tuned. There's so much more to discover. Until then, thank you again for listening, and I look forward to seeing you in the next story. Take care and stay cozy.